Are you searching for a deeper understanding of yourself and your place in the world? Do you yearn for more balance, more peace, and purpose in your life? Well, look no further than the Intuitive Revolution Podcast, your trusted source for holistic insights and intuitive guidance. I'm your host, Alicia Farricielli, and I am ready to take you on a journey to inner peace and balanced well-being. Welcome back to the Intuitive Revolution Podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Farricielli. Today, we're going to have such an amazing conversation, as we always do, but this one is super special because we're going to be talking a little bit about masculinity. Josh Tomeoni, sorry, I'm totally butchered your name. We're going to roll it.
You're good. Everybody butchers it all the time.
So
you're completely
he has an amazing podcast. He was gracious enough to let me come on. I wanted to have him on our podcast because he has so much great knowledge, especially for you dads and you guys out there. I know we have some people in our audience that are, I really wanted to get him on here to talk to you about that. So welcome to the show, Josh.
Thank you, Alicia. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm so glad to see you again. You know, we did the episode on my podcast a few months ago, and it's great to just chat with you.
So Josh, take us back a little bit, because I know now you're helping other men with their masculinity is in the words today. And take us back how you started to embrace failure and then turn that into growth. Your story.
Sure. I appreciate you asking that. I think, so let's start with a common issue, I think, that a lot of people have with just even the word failure. Like a lot of people, I think, have a difficult time even hearing that word, right? Like they hear the word failure and they're like, I don't want to embrace that. I don't want to say that I've had any failures in my life, etc. And here's the reason why I think. From my experience, when people hear the word failure, what they think of is they think of this as some sort of ultimate identity that I'm putting on myself. Like I am a failure. However, let's talk about the definition for a second. I pulled it up because I thought you might ask about it. So the first definition of failure is lack of success, not helpful. Second definition of failure, here's what it says. Ready? The omission of expected or required action. Once again, the omission of expected or required action. What does that mean? It just means that you didn't do what was expected. I mean, doesn't it happen every day, Alicia? Yeah. So what that means is, by definition, you fail every single day. But yet we have such a hard time bringing that on because we don't want to think that we're a failure. And I agree with that, because no one is a failure. No one is a failure. Let me be really clear about that. No one's identity is failure. No one on the planet. The biggest loser you know, still not a failure. There's still good things about them. They are still an amazing person. There's still things inside of their heart. I fully believe we have amazing, if we live our authentic selves, there's still amazing pieces of that. So no one is a failure. However, if I want to wake up at 7 a.m, my alarm goes off at 7, and then I hit my snooze button, that's my first failure of the day, right? Because it's not what I was wanting to do. What I was wanting to do is just wake up when 7 o'clock hits. So I think the very first step here, specifically for men, is just admitting that failure is okay. And not only is failure okay, failure is the only growth to success. It's the only way to succeed. Tell me one person you've ever met in your life, Alicia, that was massively successful that didn't fail.
There's none. There's no people in my life that I admire, look up to, they don't fail like sit on a daily basis. They learn from it and they move on. That's I think the key too thing is like moving on from it and not keeping in the victimhood.
Absolutely. Hold on one second. I went off frame, which you're never supposed to do on a podcast, but here's the reason that I did this is I actually just read this yesterday. Yeah. I have one of those like rip off calendars with quotes. And this quote really stuck with me. I actually did an Instagram post about it today. Fortune does favor the bold, and you'll never know what you're capable of if you don't try.
Yeah.
I thought that was fantastic. And that's Sheryl Sandberg. She's a business executive, philanthropist. If you don't know her, look her up. Like, she's done amazing things with her life. Maybe you don't agree with everything, but she's had a lot of success as far as worldly success. Guaranteed she would say the same thing if she was on this podcast right now. You have to fail. Failure is a part of the process. It just is. It's like, it's doing the reps, right? It's like a workout. When you're doing a workout, you fail. And then you succeed, and then you fail, and then you succeed, and then you fail. It doesn't work unless you have that failure. It just doesn't. So all that being said, let's talk about how that applies to men. Well, I think the way that it applies to men, and what has been true of my life, plus a lot of men that I've seen and that I've worked with, is that oftentimes if someone's a man, the idea is if they fail, then either they should give up or they can't talk about it. So let me give you an example. And let me ask you, because you're a woman. Alicia, do you think in general in society, if a woman is going through a tough time, maybe she's in an abusive situation, and then she comes and talks to anyone and says, like, I'm going to therapy, I'm going to a victim support group, I'm really working on myself, what's the general reaction from most people?
First thing is, it's a lot of love around them. People go, oh, tell me more about this. But then again, it's also, well, maybe she's too emotional. So there's the two back and forth. It really depends on who you're talking to, because women get judged for their emotions too as being too emotional. Sure. Yeah, as opposed to men. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah,
but in general,
compared to men, absolutely.
Besides the emotional piece,
women can walk into
support.
I think that's why more women seek out more mental health support, because they know it's available for them, and they're going to be seen and heard more than probably men would be, and not judged for it by their peers, not by their therapist.
My experience, every man I've ever talked to has had the same experience as me. And my experience is, if a man does the same thing, and a man says, wow, I'm in this abusive relationship, I'm going to get therapy, I'm in this victim support group, all these things are going wrong, usually the response is, what the hell is wrong with you?
Yes,
or
I can see
what
that.
Did you do?
Yeah.
That's a big one. Like, did you have an affair on your wife? Oh, did you cheat on your girlfriend? Did you embezzle money from your company? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's always, what did you do? So I'm not blaming society for men not coming out in droves and actually dealing with this stuff, because it's not society's fault. Again, that would be a victim mentality, which is not helpful to anyone. So I'm not blaming society for this, but what I'm saying is that just puts a certain thing inside of every man of like, well, I can't talk about this. I'm not allowed to. I just have to put my head down and do my work. Or as my grandpa used to say, pick yourself up by your bootstraps and try again. If you fall off the horse, get back up and try again. Like, there's nothing wrong with that philosophy. I tell my kids that all the time. My daughter, who's 7 years old, got hit in the face with a basketball the other day in a basketball game. And instead of going there and coddling her, like, I made sure she was okay, but I was like, you're brave, you're strong, keep going, you got this, etc., etc., etc. And through that, guess what happened? So I'll tell this story real quick. There's another guy on the other team. Let me tell that story first. So this boy, much bigger than her, he was this big old burly dude that looked like he was from Hicksville, and his big old burly dude of a dad who was like me, but like bigger, right? Had a beard and very hick looking and maybe less professional than I look, etc. You know, like that was the vibe, right? This kid gets hit like in the head, not even in the face. He runs off the court crying, jumps in his dad's lap, and he's just crying like a little baby there. Okay. And his dad's basically just like, you know, supporting him, I guess, in his. Now, I'm not blaming that dad, because I think that dad was doing what he thought was the best in that situation. I think that what he thought was he really needed to support and care for his son. He seemed like a loving father. However, what did that teach that kid? It taught that kid that when you go through something difficult, or when you fail or something else, you just need to become a puddle and let other people take care of you. And that is terrible. That's terrible. My daughter got hit in the face with a basketball. I looked at her. I made sure she wasn't like bleeding and needed to go to the hospital or something. She was fine. She was crying. I was like, you okay? You good? Love you. You're doing awesome.
I like how
go
that
for
used
it.
To, yeah.
Go in there. Go after it. You're strong. You're brave. You're courageous. Make it happen. And then she went and scored 2 baskets.
Sorry to interrupt you. I love how you didn't say, just toughen up, just get out there and do it. Like, you told her, you gave her confidence behind, or you have this, like, you've got this, you can do this, instead of the, you know, I call it the toxic masculinity. That's like, it's, you got this, huff, 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 just, ignore all this stuff. It's like you let her process through that and gave her the confidence behind it. Because as a parent, that's kind of our jobs, is to give our children some confidence to a certain extent, Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point, you still want to, this is something that I didn't learn until my mid-30s, by the way. So I'm not an expert at this at all. I spent 35-ish years of my life not knowing how to do this. But then when I finally learned how to do it, I was like, oh, this is critical. Like you still have to accept and realize that there's emotion and there's difficulty. So like, you don't want to downplay that and just remove it, because as men, that's what we usually do. We usually like, oh, just toughen up. It's fine. You're good. Right. And I love the fact that you brought up toxic masculinity, because you're going to put me on a soapbox now.
Okay,
I don't
tell me
believe
more.
Toxic masculinity is a thing, and I'll explain why. I'm happy to. So we live in a society in general where masculinity is seen as bad. It's seen as toxic. It's seen as chauvinistic. It's seen as evil. The problem is putting the word toxic with masculinity doesn't make sense at all, because there is no masculinity that's toxic. So let me explain. There are toxic actions. There are people that act toxically, whether they're male or female. It's amazing to me that there's no phrase called toxic femininity. Never heard it once in my life. Why is that?
Oh, yeah.
Have you met any toxic females? I sure as hell have. Yeah. I don't think there's a disproportionate amount of toxicity among males versus females. I think both are very toxic at times. I've been toxic in my life as well. I'm not like free from this. So here's what I believe it does. What I believe it does is the same thing as when I talk to a young woman who says, well, all men are fill in the blank. Or I talk to a guy that says all women are fill in the blank. What it does is it puts in your brain that there's something about masculinity that's bad, that's evil. My firm belief is that masculinity is pure and amazing. It's courageous, it's confident, it's what is needed in this society. When somebody goes to war, they don't call on femininity.
Right. Energy.
And I'm not talking male, female here. I'm saying they do not call for feminine energy in a war. Because guess what? Feminine energy sucks in a war. Masculine energy is what you need in a war. Masculine energy sucks if you need caring and concern and empathy and everything else.
We have both of it.
Feminine energy is what you need there. I've learned that the hard way with my girls. Like, I have feminine energy too. Everyone has masculine and feminine energy. So let's start with that. But the majority of men have mainly masculine energy. The majority of women have mainly feminine energy. That's the way it works. But there are some men that have mainly feminine energy, and there are some women that have mainly masculine energy. Hence the sexuality and gender and all these things we're going through right now. That's part of the reason for that. So there's nothing wrong with that. However, let's just talk about the majority for a second. If the majority of men have majority masculine energy, then by the very fact of talking about toxic masculinity makes them feel bad for being themselves. It makes them feel, well, I can't authentically be myself because that's bad, that's evil, that's toxic, that's chauvinistic. No, it's not. Toxic behaviors are toxic. Masculinity is not toxic. So here's the thing. Here's what ends up happening and what's happened right now. There are several voices in the world right now. You take your Andrew Tates of the world or whoever you want that a lot of people would consider toxic masculinity. Why do they have so many followers? Why are so many people listening to them? Here's the reason why. There is an exorbitant amount of young men in the world today that just are desperately looking for any man to tell them being masculine is good. That being masculine is true, that being masculine is authentic, that they can be masculine. So they will cling to any man that's saying that. Now, a lot of the men that are saying that right now are men that also have very toxic traits. They are men like Andrew Tate that I wouldn't want a million miles near my daughters. I don't want to accept, even though, like, here's the thing of guys like him. I have a massive amount of respect for a lot of the things he's done in his life. He got into shape. He's super disciplined. He became world class at his field. He has crushed it with marketing and everything else. The dude is an animal. Like, if you don't respect that, it's just because you're bitter or resentful or insecure or something else. And he also says some things, and it seems to act in a very, very toxic way, especially towards women, where he will go on and he'll brag about how many women he's slept with and how many women he's fucked and how they're just like, it doesn't do any emotional thing to him whatsoever. And he can just go out and do whatever he pleases. And there's absolutely no consequences for that, which is utter and complete bullshit. And it makes me really sad and it hurts for me because I don't want my daughters being a million miles near a guy like that. Not at all. But men listen to him because he's one of the few voices that are saying, hey, it's okay to be masculine. And the problem is that you can throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? You can take that one element of him, that female element, and say, well, then everything else he does is wrong and evil. No, that's not true. We all are interdimensional people, right? Like we all have these good and bad aspects of ourselves. But what I think we really need right now, which is one of the voices I'm trying to be, I just have a smaller platform than a guy like Andrew Tate, but eventually, maybe I will. It's growing. It continues to grow. But here's the reason why. There are some male voices that are very healthy in the space. I'm not trying to say there aren't any. There are several that I respect and I look up to and everything else. And if anybody wants to know any of those, reach out to me on Instagram, Josh the Derelict. I'll tell you all the guys that I think are great that you should follow. But here's the thing that I think our society really needs, and I do in my coaching with men, and that is to try to help men be okay and be authentic to their true masculine selves and to actually realize, no. Let's pause for a second. Being masculine does not mean going out and conquering women like a guy like Andrew Tate might say. Being masculine means being a protector of women. And some women get, some people get offended by that. Like, I don't need protection. Okay, we're not talking about whether you need protection or not. We're saying that men historically throughout human history have been protectors. Guess what? Women have too. Like if you go back to the cave days, what did men do? Men protected the women against animals. They went out, they fought, they killed the animals, they brought back the meat. They did all that protection. Well, what were the women doing?
Yeah.
They were in the caves protecting the babies. So I'm not saying that women aren't protectors. They are 100%. But men, man, if we could have a society where guys were confident and courageous and kind and protecting women, like, dude, that would be an amazing world. That's the world I want to live in. I don't want to live in this world where guys are taking advantage of women. And I don't want the other side either. I don't want this world where these guys are not even guys anymore. And they're just letting all of their femininity take over. And they're just like little whiny babies that are just like sitting around and they're in therapy for 30 years and they never get better about anything. And it's like, oh my God, you said something that triggered me. There's no such thing as a trigger. Here's the thing with triggers, right? Is that if something is triggering you or something is triggering me, here's the more important question. The question is not what it is and how to change the trigger and to make somebody else change their behavior. That's complete and utter craziness. The fact that we live in a society where I just got an email from my kid's school district this morning. And I was like, no, I'm not doing, just because somebody tells me to do something or say something, or I can't say something because of a trigger. No, you know what's more important, or what would make this world a better place, is that person works on their triggers and they work on why that's triggering them so much. When I get really frustrated at something, like I used to have a massive anger problem, Alicia. So like, I get this. But when I finally came around to understanding how to deal with this, I realized, no, I got to realize like why I'm getting angry. Like this is about me. This isn't about anybody else. I don't give a shit what somebody says to me. I don't care what trigger they use to me. I need to focus on myself, because if I don't, and I just play the victim,
man, that's such good stuff. That is absolutely. And I want to make the point too, for women that we keep the toxic masculinity, we keep referring to that. We do need men to step up and protect us, because that's how we come into our femininity, for our female power, is to feel safe and protected. So we can be the magic behind the, not behind the scenes, but do the magic all around that. And so there's so much, people think because masculinity means they have all the power, and so they're trying to take the power back. It's quite the actual opposite. I mean,
100%. Are you kidding me? Have you seen strong feminine power? It's insane. It's beautiful. Like insane in a good way. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Like,
yes.
Oh my God, there's nothing more attractive to me than just insanely strong feminine energy. Like I'm like tearing up thinking about it, because it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And we live in a world where if these guys keep acting all feminine, guess what? The women have to act masculine because it's what you have to do.
It's the struggle back and forth as we've tried to take the feminine energies, try to take over the masculine to balance it out. However, we're having just as lopsided stuff because it needs to be a balance. Everybody has to be balanced. You have to have, there's times like when I'm working, I have to be more my masculine, but then I have to get in the creative flow of my feminine. So it's like both back and forth. At home, I want my husband to step up, protect me. Absolutely. I don't want and we had these conversations. I do not want to feel unsafe. And he's a very, very, very good at the physical of all the protection. He's a protector. That's how he stands in his masculinity. That's very, very safe, very, very positive. And so I can back out and come into my feminine portion. And even that, balances out for, different same-sex marriage, all this stuff. Like you have to have the same balances going in back and forth with people. And so we have to be very comfortable with both sides of ourselves.
And Alicia, let me ask you something about what you just said about your husband. How attractive and
amazing.
sexy
Like I can do it like it, but deep down I'm going, I can relax. I can relax. And actually there's a lot of proof that in order for women to feel safe and to do that, they need to raise their estrogen levels. The best thing to raise their estrogen levels is when the masculine approach can take over all the have to do's and half the things and they have to do and the stress and the worries and takes that over in a protective mannerism. Not in a domineering mannerism,
100%.
but a protector. So I think that's the two difference. I think the toxic portions become where men are like domineering over women. And kind of, the person you addressed earlier is kind of domineering to dangle something in front. Yeah. The power struggles between men and women. And we should be balanced and we should be flowing and working together because there is no bad thing as masculinity or femininity. It's all how, like you said, it's the results and what you use with it and your reactions with it.
And strong masculine energy and
Absolutely.
strong feminine energy are like a magnet.
Yeah.
Like they go together so well. And where it ends up being a problem is what you just said. And that is where, let's say this guy is primarily, averages. Most men mainly masculine, most women mainly feminine. So let's just talk about the general rule. And this guy starts living into his feminine energy really strong.
Absolutely.
Well, guess what? She has no choice but to go masculine because that's what she has to do to make the relationship work. We see this a lot. I was actually talking to a woman about this the other day in corporate America, especially, where women feel like they have to bring in masculine energy because it's really hard to just bring in full feminine energy in the workforce. It just is because the workforce is really designed around masculine energy. And a lot of women struggle with that.
I'm a previous woman struggled with it. I had to really deconstruct the masculinity in myself and come back into my femininity powers. And it's a long process from being in that corporate world of the hustle, sell, like any type of sales position.
For sure.
You have to be high into. No, they want you to be charming and in your feminine portion to get, but you have to be high. Like you're a man when you're out there. You have to be to the point to where it's almost ruthless.
Now, I would say I agree. I think a lot of that is also a misnomer. So I'll give you an example. I was speaking with I guess I could call her a friend. We actually met. I meet a lot of great people at Tony Robbins events because I'm a huge fan of his. And the people that I meet there are always amazing people. And she's one of the people that I met there. And we were going back and forth kind of about the content that she was putting out on social media. And one of the things that I said to her is I said, look, you are such her energy is amazing. Like you have amazing energy. She's a very beautiful person inside and out. I'm not just talking about her looks. Like everything about that. And what I was telling her is I was like, it's not coming across in your videos. I was like, what is, because I know who you are. Like, what is it about that? And then she was talking about, she's like, well, I've had issues in the past where like guys have tried to flirt with me and it's become like a sexual thing and everything else. And I could totally understand that because I am a guy and I've seen plenty of guys and I know how guys act. I get that. And I was like, you know what though? Like the problem is if you're keeping that back from the world just because of a couple bad experiences, then you're missing out on all the people that see that beauty and that joy and that want to connect with you authentically. Like me, as an example, like I'm not going after, like I'm a single man, but I'm not going after her in this context. That's not why we're having this conversation. I just love her energy. And I know that she's going to do amazing things. And she already is. She's a business owner. She does a bunch of stuff, right? But I said, but anytime you shut off any piece of your authentic self that's unique and that's different and that's you, because all of us are unique and different and authentic in different ways, you're just depriving the world of who you are. And going back to my work with men specifically, we all struggle with this, obviously. I'm talking about a conversation with a woman right now. So I'm not saying women don't struggle with this. They do, of course, we all do. But going back to my conversation with men, the thing that's really sad for me is when these men do it, especially when they are kind of in that midlife stage, you know, and they've had some success and they've had families and they've had failures and there's, you know, a lot of stuff that's happened. And then all of a sudden they kind of go through that crisis period, right? Commonly referred to as a midlife crisis, where they don't know who they are. They don't know what authentically, like, who am I? Like, I've been doing all these things. I don't know. Okay, I need to go buy a Porsche. Oh, okay, I need to go get a younger wife. Oh, okay, I need to switch careers. Oh, okay, I need, like, fill in the blank. I need to go start a cult. Like, guys do crazy shit when they're in their midlife stage. But the reason is because they're not allowing themselves just to be authentically themselves. Now, sometimes that crisis is good for people. And sometimes that produces a really good, authentic version of themselves. And often, more often than I'd like to say, it doesn't end well. I don't know if you know this or not. I've been talking about this a lot lately, but the highest rate of suicide is men 35 to 50. Why is that? We live in a male-dominated, males get everything world, yet they're killing themselves at the highest rate of any group of people. Well, if they really were ruling the world, would they be killing themselves so much? I mean, I really think it's because there is all this pressure for a man to do all of these things, but then they can't be authentic about the stuff that they're going through. They can't be authentic about even using the word failure, because then that brings shame and it brings, I'm a terrible person. Like, what do I do? You know, and this message is not just for people out there that are like super depressed. Like, if you are, goodness sake, like, reach out to me, please. Reach out to somebody. Like, literally, I answer all my messages on Instagram. Josh the Derelict, send me a message. I'm happy to chat with you. I've been there. I've been in very depressed places. I've been in places where I thought my life was ending. I have. I've been through all the failures in the book. You name them, I've been through. Health, marriage, business, friendship, whatever. But here's the thing, like, just digging into that authentic self, digging into whatever that is, that masculine piece that's somehow overshadowed, or it's not coming out in the right way, is what makes the world a better place. It really does. Because without that, men get insecure, uncomfortable, etc., and they go usually one of two ways, Alicia. They either go the victim, depressive, life's not worth it. That doesn't mean they have to be suicidal necessarily, but just that side of things of like, I give up. You know, I can't tell you how many women that I talk to that are like, so I date because I'm single. And I can't tell you how many women that I go on dates with are like, oh my God, I'm just so glad that you're not just like some dude playing video games in his mom's basement. I was like, are there really that many? And she's like, oh my, they're just everywhere, right? Like, you look at a dating profile, and the women I try to stay away from are the ones that are always talking about like, don't do this and don't be this and don't do this and don't be this and don't do this, because they're living in this victim mentality of like, all men are fill in the blank. Men do it too, by the way. This is not one-sided. Or going back to those two options. So they're either this kind of depressive victim, like, I need to change things and everybody needs to change around me. Those are also constantly the people that have triggers about everything. And there's always something. Yeah. And there's always something that you're doing wrong. And there's always some way that the government is preventing me from doing whatever I want to. Like, it's always something on that side. Or there's the other side. And the other side is, well, I'm just going to take charge and I'm going to conquer everything. Doesn't matter if it's a woman, doesn't matter if it's a business, doesn't matter if it's a child.
Almost anger coming through.
And that's where your toxic masculinity comes from. Correct. And they're both based in the same thing. They're both based in an insecure, uncomfortable male that is not okay with themselves. They're not okay with the authentic, true masculinity inside of them. And maybe they are to a degree. None of this is 100% one way or the other, but they're not fully alive and present in that. And therefore, they feel like they need to do something else. They either need to go this very, very, side over here, which a lot of the times is like digging into femininity that's not authentically themselves, or they go this toxic route over here and they just say, well, fuck everybody. I don't give a shit. I'm just going to go do whatever I want to do. And both of those are sad. And both of those are easily fixable. They really are. It's just, let's just spend some time. This is what I do with my guys all the time that I coach. Let's just spend some time figuring out who you are. Like why are you doing what you're doing? What is your mission in life? Why are you here on this planet? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Who do you care about? What are your failures? Let's talk about them. It's okay to fail. I fail every single day of my life. So I'm an expert. Talk to me about it. And also, just in case people hear this the wrong way as well, I'm also extremely successful. I wouldn't have you on here if you weren't. Like, I run 2 businesses. Right. I run 2 businesses. I have a good podcast. I coach a lot of guys. I'm a great dad. Like, I'm not here to say like, oh, poor me. No, I'm not. I live in a beautiful house. I live in a great area. I have everything that I need. I buy most of the things I want. Now, it's all relative, right? Like, I just look at the people that are 10 times more successful than me, and I'm like, yeah, I don't have anything. But right, like, I'm more successful than 95% of the people in the world. So I'm not here saying, oh, woe is me, I'm a terrible person. I'm here saying, I am all those things, but the only reason I'm all those things is because of the fact that I'm trying to be as authentic as possible, and I'm trying to deal with my failure when it pops up.
So, question for our female listeners, what are some ways that they can support if they have a man in their lives who either is not quite in touch with their true authentic self and they're trying to be something else? What's one thing they can do to support that, to bring that out in them?
Such a great question. I will tell you, so one of the things that I really appreciated about my last relationship that I was in, one of the things that woman really helped me with, which I'm very grateful for her, even though we're not in a relationship anymore, is that I remember the first time she said this, and it hit me with a ton of bricks. So previous to her, I'd been in a lot of relationships where I ended up playing more of a codependent role, which is, again, more on the feminine side. And so it's a weak masculinity. It is, I'm doing what I need to do because, and a lot of the times it's good intentions. A lot of the times it's like, no, I just want everybody to get along. But I mainly want us to be okay so that you're okay, so that you make me feel okay because I'm insecure about myself. Like that, in a nutshell, that's what codependency is. I was very uncodependent in this last relationship. And one of the things that she always said to me is she said, it's really sexy when you disagree with me. And I remember coming from a recovering codependent, I was like, what? She's like, yeah. I was like, explain that to me. What does that mean? She's like, it's you being authentically you. Like, you're not just disagreeing with me to disagree with me. That's not what I mean. It's that if you have an opinion that's different than mine and you talk about it, that is your masculinity confidence coming out, and it's sexy as hell. So I think with that, here's my encouragement to women. Encourage your man to be themselves in that way, even if it's disagreeing with you. Because I think what you'll find, again, I'm not a woman, so I can't speak to this, but I think what you'll find is that if you encourage your man to be themselves and to have their own opinions and to do their own things, you're going to find a sexier version of that man than you've ever seen before. Because while men may be the protector, like we talked about earlier, and we're the ones that we want to protect and we want to do that for our women, we only want to do that for women that are encouraging and supporting and wanting us to do that. So if as a woman, you bring your masculine energy into the relationship and you're like, fuck you, I don't need that, I'm just going to do it myself.
Right.
What's my role here? I don't know why I'm here anymore. And if I don't know why I'm here, I'm really uncomfortable. And then guess what, Alicia? The moment my business partner, friend, assistant, whoever looks at me and they're like, God damn, like you are sexy and you got these opinions and it's great that you protect people and everything else. All of a sudden, that's a hard one. It's hard for me to now to look at my wife the same way. If I have all these other women telling me all these amazing things about myself and I'm not getting that at home. I mean, I heard somebody say this, and again, take this for what you will from a 41-year-old single man who's been divorced and failed at every relationship he's ever had. Maybe I'm not the best to give relationship advice, or maybe I'm the best because I've failed at all of it and I know it doesn't work. But so take this with a grain of salt. Decide if you want to listen to it or not. But here's what I would say. What I would say is one thing that I've learned about relationships is that you want to make sure that so speaking to the women for a second, this is true for men as well, but speaking to the women for a second, you want to be 100% of the time the number one person that is telling your man the best things about himself. Because if you're not that person, another woman will be. And no matter how great of a man he is, that's hard to deny. It is. And you might be married to an extremely great man who would never cheat on you, never think about it, and never everything else. Yeah, but he's going to
make
struggle.
the relationship worse between the two of you.
That's going to be a life.
Yeah.
It's going to be misery. And the same thing, by the way, goes both ways. One of the things that I learned in a couple of my last relationships is that there was one specifically where even though I thought I was really good at that, I realized at the end of the relationship, I kind of sucked at it. So when the relationship ended, and it's kind of a mutual ending, when the relationship ended, and then all of a sudden, like 2 days later, she was with another guy, I had to think about that. I'm like, well, why is that? And I'm not going to take responsibility for her doing her shit. That's her thing. But what I can take responsibility for is there was another guy that was telling her the best things about herself. It wasn't me. And that doesn't always end in the end of a relationship. But you know what's worse than the end of a relationship? A miserable relationship.
When there's no love and compassion. Yeah. I've been there. I'm divorced from it. So happily married to another person.
Yeah. So I think that's my, like, let's go back to this for a second, Alicia, because I think this is a beautiful thing. Like, strong feminine energy changes the world. So let's be clear here. This is not a masculine-led world. It's both. Strong feminine energy is what helps strong masculine energy. Like, here's an example. Look at most of the wars throughout history, and most of them are done from a man for a woman. Most of them are done because a strong masculine man has a strong feminine woman in his life, and he wants to do everything that he can for that person. Think Helen of Troy as a very common example, right? It doesn't happen without that strong feminine energy. Strong masculine men don't go to war with other strong masculine men, generally speaking, just because they want to show themselves that they're a stronger masculine man. Usually it's to impress a woman, just like the same thing we do anything. Like, look at any movie, TV show, or whatever. Why do guys act like idiots? To impress a woman, like all the time. We do it all the time, even subconsciously, right? So there's nothing stronger than strong feminine energy. And if that strong feminine energy is going into your partner, your husband, your boyfriend, and it's going fully into him, and you are the one that is telling him the best, most amazing things about him and allowing him to live his most authentic, amazing life, do you think that guy's going to give a fuck about any other woman that talks to him, looks at him, or anything else? I'm telling you what, it doesn't matter if you are a 3 out of 10 looks-wise. If you're doing that for your man, a 9 or 10 out of 10 can go up to him, tell him, hey, I want to go fuck you tonight. And he's going to say, fuck you. I don't give a shit. Because it doesn't even go on his radar. There's this common idea that like all us as men, like we only care about looks and all that sort of stuff. That's total BS. If I have a woman in my life that has strong feminine energy and is completely like complimenting to me and like loving me and encouraging me to be courageous and be confident and be all these masculine traits, why would I ever want to leave that? It doesn't matter. I might get distracted because we all get distracted, but I'd be a complete fool to leave that. So if there's any women out there that want to do that,
he's already told you his Instagram. He answers all his messages. So
yeah, reach out to me on Instagram.
That's love before you send the picture.
I love that. I already get some of that, but
So,
yeah,
Josh,
maybe it'll happen again.
Have any men? You primarily only work with men, correct? Okay. Any men that want to work with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? Instagram.
Honestly, that's the best way is Instagram. I respond to all my own messages. I reach out to me. Again, Josh, the Derelict on Instagram. Just send me a message. If you are interested in coaching in any capacity, if you just send me the word coach, how about this? How about intuitive coach? Because that way I'll remember that you're from the intuitive revolution. It'll help trigger my mind. So if you just send me the words intuitive coach, I'll know that you want a free coaching session. I'll send you a link to my calendar and I'll give you 30 minutes for free. It's a $500 value. I'm offering it to you, Alicia, and to your guests because I appreciate you. I like you. We've had a great rapport and I want to help. I really do. So there's, by the way, there's no commitment after that. It's literally just a free coaching call. If you like it, you want to continue the relationship, fine. If not, you get 30 minutes of my time to
that's
ask me, talk
offer.
about anything you want.
If everyone should definitely go do that. And of course, all your Josh's information will be in the show notes. So click on those and set that up with him. I want to thank you so much for coming on here, Josh, and sharing everything that you've shared with us. You've made got my brain spinning. Got some different perspectives that I really, really appreciate. And just point out some things that I feel like I had my own coaching session too. So, which is one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast, because I get amazing guests on here that just start to contribute to the world and start to make us think a little bit differently and to bring out, to get rid of some of the toxic talk that's going on in the world. So again, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And I really appreciate that compliment. Thank you very much. And I do want to point out something as well. Even in this conversation, Alicia, this is encouragement for you. You brought your feminine energy, which allowed me to get on my soapbox and to talk about masculinity and to do all these things. So I just want to point this out to your listeners and viewers right now. This is an example of the question you asked earlier. Like, what would you say to women? This is it. We're not in a romantic relationship. We are in a friendship on a podcast, but it's the same thing. This is it. And there were maybe some things that you didn't even agree with or that you're rethinking, and that's fine. And same thing with me. But what you did is you allowed space. You allowed me to say what I wanted to say. You encouraged me through that. Like, this is exactly what we're talking about. This is exactly what we're talking about as far as feminine energy and masculine energy meeting. It's a beautiful thing. And it's a beautiful thing. I think the reason I want to say this, it's a beautiful thing much beyond romantic relationships. Friendships, the workspace, businesses, like, this is where magic happens. If any of you guys that are listening or watching, or gals that are listening and watching right now, if you're stuck somewhere, I promise you, if you focus on this, just your primary energy and trying to make it come out of you more, you're going to see amazing things happen in your life.
Thank you for that. I've worked very hard the past couple of years to really start to bring that to get, like I said before, out of the I had more of a toxic masculinity inside of me, but to bring all of that outside, to not have to be, the man in the show, single momhood, whatever, to really be able to focus on that. So that means a lot to me. Thank you so much, Sherry.
You're very welcome. And I mean, obviously, Alicia, you're a boss. Like, it's obvious that you're a boss. So if you need to bring that energy, you will. So, oftentimes for people like you, sometimes it's difficult because, like, you can bring that energy really well,
but it's
sometimes
authentically
it's hard to be like,
who I am.
okay,
that was the biggest piece for it to me. It was like, this is not really authentically who I am or who I want to be. So I had to back it up to where it's like, it felt good. It's all the intuitive, but the intuitive revolution.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you again.
I love it.